I had my hand on the doorknob when I heard his voice behind me. "Where do you think you're going?" Greg snarled. My heart jumped. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My fingers clutched the strap of my overnight bag tighter, and I kept my eyes on the door. I had played this moment in my head 100 times, the moment I'd finally walk out. But in every version, I made it out before he came home. "Drop that bag," he growled, louder this time. "I said drop it!" I turned slowly. My legs were shaking so badly I thought I'd fall over. Greg's face was red, twisted with rage. His eyes darted from the bag in my hand to the shoes I had on. My walking shoes, not the house slippers he insisted I wear inside. He knew. He knew I wasn't just going for a walk. "Divorce?" He spat the word like poison. "Don't even think about it." He stepped closer. "You think you can just leave me?" he shouted. "Is that what this is? You pack a little bag, put on your little shoes, and just walk out like you've got a choice?" I didn't say anything. There was no point. Anything I said would set him off more. I'd learned that the hard way. But I stood there. I didn't back away. That made him angrier. "Do you think I'm stupid?" he hissed. "You think I don't know what this is about? Who's helping you, huh? Who?" He was pacing now, hand running through his hair, then gripping his jaw, then balling into fists. I whispered, "Greg, I'm just—" "Shut up!" he roared. The sound bounced off the walls like thunder. He rushed toward me, grabbed the bag from my hand, and threw it across the room. Clothes spilled out. My toothbrush rolled under the couch. I stared at it. For some reason, watching that little plastic toothbrush bounce away made my throat close. I swallowed hard. Greg stood inches from me now. His breath was hot and sour from the beer he must have just finished in the car. "You want to destroy everything?" he growled. "You want to make me look like the bad guy? You ungrateful—" Then his fist drew back. I saw it. I saw it. His arm bent, his body tensed. He was going to hit me in the stomach. I felt everything in me freeze. This was it. But before he could strike, the bathroom door creaked open. Greg stopped. His arm hovered midair. We both turned. A man stepped out of the bathroom, calm, tall, wearing a plain jacket and jeans. He looked at Greg, then at me, then slowly lifted his hand. There was a badge. "Greg Thompson?" the man said, his voice low but steady. Greg blinked like he'd just seen a ghost. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm Detective Lyle." He took a step forward. "I think you and I need to have a conversation." Greg didn't move. His fist was still half raised, but his arm was shaking now. He looked at me, then at the man, then at the badge. The room went silent except for the sound of my own breathing. For the first time in a long time, I saw fear on Greg's face. Real fear. And for a split second, I allowed myself to breathe. Not hope. Not yet. Just breathe. People always ask, why do women stay? But they never ask, how did it begin? Greg wasn't always like that. Or maybe he was. And I just didn't see it. When we first met, he was smooth, charming, and so attentive. He'd open doors, surprise me with flowers, cook dinner while playing jazz music in the background. I remember thinking, this must be what love looks like. I was 28, working as a bank clerk, and had just come out of a messy breakup. Greg made me feel safe, at least at first. We got married quickly, less than a year after we met. I moved into his house, and it felt like a dream come true. Everything was already set up. The polished furniture, the soft rugs, the sparkling kitchen. All I had to do was fit in. The first red flag was subtle. He didn't like my perfume. He said it gave him a headache. I stopped wearing it. Then he didn't like the way my skirts showed my knees. Said it made me look cheap. So I switched to longer dresses. He said my friends were too loud, too single, too much. Eventually, I stopped picking up their calls. At the time, I didn't even notice I was changing. It felt like I was just trying to be a good wife. That's what I told myself. That's what he told me too. But things didn't stop there. Greg started keeping tabs. If I went out, he needed pictures, timestamps, proof. He didn't like me working full-time anymore. Said it wasn't necessary. So I went part-time. He handled the finances. Soon, I stopped handling anything. The house became my world. I cooked. I cleaned. I stayed silent. I didn't laugh too loud. I didn't wear lipstick unless he picked the color, but what I remember most were the silences. Not peaceful silences. No. The kind where you sit across from someone at dinner and feel like you're holding your breath the entire time, praying they don't find something wrong with the chicken, or the way you chewed, or the way you looked at them too long, or not long enough. Sometimes, Greg would disappear for hours without a word. No explanation, no apology. If I asked, he'd say, "You don't need to know everything. Stop acting like the FBI." I stopped asking. But one night, 2 years ago, everything changed. We had just argued about something small. I think I forgot to refill the ice tray. He was furious, said I was careless, disrespectful. I tried to walk away. He grabbed my arm and yanked me so hard I slipped on the kitchen floor. I fell hard. The pain shot through my side. I couldn't move for a few seconds. And then I noticed something else. Blood. Not a lot. Just enough. I was pregnant. Only 6 weeks. We hadn't told anyone. By the time we got to the hospital, Greg had already made up a story. Said I tripped while mopping. Told the nurse I was clumsy but sweet. She gave me a strange look, but she didn't say anything. The doctor confirmed what I already feared. I had lost the baby. Greg held my hand and cried in the waiting room. The nurses said he was such a caring husband. I just stared at the floor. I didn't say a word. I kept that secret for a year, until I couldn't anymore. It was a rainy Sunday. Greg had gone out, and I was sitting alone in the kitchen, staring at the tile where I'd fallen. I picked up the phone and called Aunt Teresa. She hadn't heard from me in months. I told her everything in one breath, about the control, the fear, the baby. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she only said 5 words. "You don't have to stay." And in that moment, I finally believed I might have a way out. It started with a strange laugh. Not mine, his. Greg rarely laughed around me anymore. But that night I heard him from the hallway. Deep, casual laughter like he didn't have a care in the world. It caught me off guard. I had just finished folding laundry in the guest room and was walking past the staircase when I heard him talking downstairs on the phone. He didn't know I was home. I'd parked around the corner and slipped in through the back door because I forgot my wallet. I don't know what made me stop, but I did. I stood still, barely breathing, listening as his voice drifted up from the living room. He was pacing, like always when he was on a long call. His voice sounded relaxed, even light. But his words, they turned my blood cold. "Bro, I don't even talk to her unless I need something. She's basically a free maid at this point," he said, laughing again. "She's too scared to leave. Trust me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My ears rang like my brain was trying to block it out. "She still thinks I love her or something," he continued. "I haven't touched her in months, not even interested. The woman's a walking apology." I gripped the stair railing so hard my fingers hurt. "She won't leave. She's broken," he said. "She's just here to keep the house clean and warm food on the table. As long as she does that, I let her stay." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run down the stairs and ask him who he was talking to. I wanted to cry, throw something, demand answers. But instead, I stayed frozen. I listened to the man I married reduce me to nothing more than a chore list, a background object, a tool. Something in me snapped. I backed away slowly from the stairs, walked into the guest bathroom, and locked the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even sit down. I didn't cry. Not right away. My body felt numb, like all the emotion had been drained at once. But my heart felt like it cracked in two. He thought I was too scared to leave. He thought I was too weak to fight back. He thought I was his. And for a long time, I had been, but not anymore. I waited until he left later that night, off to one of his usual late meetings. I didn't ask questions. I never did. Once the house was quiet, I went into our bedroom and opened the top drawer of my nightstand. Hidden beneath old receipts and a dusty Bible was a flip phone. Aunt Teresa had sent it to me 2 months earlier, just in case. That night I called her. I didn't say hello, I just whispered, "I'm ready." She didn't ask me what happened. She didn't need to. She said she'd be waiting when I made my move. I didn't know when that would be. I needed time. I had to plan carefully. The next day, I started hiding small bills in an empty coffee tin in the laundry room. I gathered my important documents, birth certificate, passport, bank cards, and slid them into a file folder I tucked beneath the dryer. I began keeping a duffel bag under the bathroom sink, packed with a few clothes, soap, and a spare charger. I knew Greg wouldn't notice it. He hadn't looked under the sink in years. Every day, I waited. Every day, I watched him talk and smile and lie like nothing was wrong. And every night, I remembered his voice. "She's broken, she won't leave." And I told myself, not yet, but soon. Very soon. The hardest part wasn't the waiting. It was pretending. Pretending I didn't hear him call me useless. Pretending I didn't know about the messages he sent to other women. Pretending I still cared about the way he liked his eggs in the morning, or the way he wanted the curtains drawn at exactly 6 p.m. every night. Greg liked routine. He liked control. So I gave it to him, every bit of it, while I planned my exit behind his back. Each morning, I'd wake up before him, set his clothes out, make his coffee just right. I'd smile when he walked into the kitchen like nothing was wrong. Then, while he was at work, I moved quietly through the house like a ghost, preparing everything I needed. I memorized the bus schedule. I copied our joint bank statements. I found a small storage unit an hour away and began sending a few things there, little by little. He never noticed. Or maybe he was just too busy thinking I was still broken, but I wasn't. I was angry. Quietly, deeply angry. And that anger kept me focused. Then came the dinner party. It was a Friday night, and Greg had invited some business associates over. I didn't know them, just more of his networking crowd, people he wanted to impress. He told me to look decent but not too flashy, and he said it in front of me like I was a waitress, not a wife. I wore a soft blue dress, simple jewelry, and my hair pulled back. Nothing fancy. I made roast chicken, sweet potatoes, and a homemade peach cobbler. Everything was warm by the time they arrived. The guests were kind enough, friendly, chatty. One woman complimented my cooking and smiled at me like she meant it. I almost forgot for a moment how trapped I felt. Until Greg spoke. "Honestly," he said halfway through dinner, "Amara's not much of a talker, but she makes a mean peach cobbler." Laughter, polite, awkward laughter. I lowered my eyes. "She's basically my in-house chef, housekeeper, and scheduler," he continued, waving his wine glass. "The full package, and all for free." More laughter, louder this time. Something inside me shriveled. I wanted to disappear into the floor. I wanted to throw the plate at the wall. I wanted someone, anyone, to see through the performance. I stood to take the empty dishes, hiding the burn in my cheeks. In the hallway on the way to the kitchen, I stopped to breathe. My hands were trembling, so I pressed them to the wall. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. It was the woman who'd complimented the cobbler. She looked over her shoulder, then gently placed something in my hand. A small folded note. She didn't say a word, just nodded once, a quiet, knowing look, and turned back toward the dining room. I unfolded it after she left. It read, "You deserve better. If you ever need help, call me." There was a number underneath. I didn't recognize the area code. I stared at the note for a long time. My hands still smelled like cinnamon and butter. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Greg had passed out on the couch with a half-finished drink, I stood in the kitchen holding the note like it was a lifeline. It didn't matter if I ever called her. What mattered was that someone saw me. Someone saw what he really was, even if only for a second. That was all I needed. The next morning, I moved the duffel bag to the front closet. I wasn't waiting anymore. The date was set, and no matter what happened next, I was leaving. I thought I had timed it perfectly. The duffel bag was packed. The taxi was waiting 3 blocks away. Greg had gone out for drinks with a friend, and based on his usual pattern, he wouldn't be back until well after midnight, drunk, loud, and careless. But something went wrong. The front door creaked just as I was zipping my coat. Then I heard the key in the lock. Panic shot through me. No, not now. Please, not now. The door swung open, and there he was, Greg, standing in the doorway with the stink of whiskey on his breath and suspicion in his bloodshot eyes. His gaze landed on the duffel bag by my feet. Everything froze. "Where do you think you're going?" he growled. My heart dropped to my stomach. I didn't answer. He stepped fully inside, shutting the door behind him with a soft click that felt louder than a gunshot. "I said," he barked, "where the hell do you think you're going?" I bent down slowly, reached for the bag. That was the wrong move. "Put that bag down," he thundered, marching toward me. "Divorce? You think you can just walk out on me like I'm some phase? Don't even dream about it." His voice cracked with rage. Spit flew from his mouth. "I already filed," I said quietly, gripping the handle of the bag. "And I'm leaving, Greg. Tonight." His eyes twitched. "You ungrateful witch," he spat. "You were nothing when I found you. No job, no friends, no backbone. Because you isolated me from everyone," I snapped, louder than I meant to. "You made sure I had no one else to turn to." He raised his hand. Not in a slap. No. He clenched his fist, drew back his arm, and aimed it right at my stomach. "You want to leave?" he hissed. "Fine, but I'll make sure you feel it first." I flinched, one arm across my belly, the other still clutching the duffel. But then he stopped, frozen, mouth open, eyes wide. And just like that, the air shifted. He was staring behind me. I turned. The bathroom door had opened, and standing in the doorway, calm, solid, eyes blazing with quiet fury, was Detective Renee Carter, my childhood friend from back home. She had flown in that morning. I hadn't told Greg. She was supposed to stay hidden until morning, but she must have heard the yelling. She held up her phone. "I got everything," she said, her voice low but sharp as a blade. Every word. Greg looked like a man who'd been shot in the chest and hadn't realized it yet. "You," he stammered. "You were in the... How long were you in there?" "Long enough," Renee replied. "Long enough to hear you threaten to punch your wife in the stomach." The silence in the room was thick. Greg's fist dropped to his side. I could finally breathe. "I suggest," Renee said, stepping forward, "that you back away from her. Right now." Greg stumbled a step backward. He wasn't in control anymore. Not tonight. And not ever again. Greg's eyes darted between me and Renee like a wild animal caught in a trap. You can't be serious," he stammered, his voice trembling. "You planned this?" I didn't answer him. I didn't have to. Renee stepped between us, slowly, like she was moving through fire. "Greg, I've seen men like you before. Angry, controlling. Think the world owes them a quiet wife and a clean house. But it doesn't. And she owes you nothing. Greg scoffed, but I noticed his hands. No longer fists. They were shaking. I should call your bluff, he sneered, trying to regain control. You think anyone's going to believe I actually hit her? You don't need to hit her, Renee replied coolly, holding up her phone. You threatened to. That's assault. And I have it all recorded. With your voice, your threats, everything. I've already emailed a copy to my precinct. You're bluffing, she smiled. Try me. Greg turned to me, like I'd betrayed him. You let her stay in this house? He barked. You let some stranger hide in the bathroom like a rat spying on me? I stepped forward. She's not a stranger. She's my best friend. The one person I trusted to have my back when I finally got the courage to leave you. His eyes narrowed. You think this changes anything? You think one cop and a recording gives you the right to tear my life apart? You tore it apart yourself, I said. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. Every lie, every scream, every time you made me feel like I didn't matter. You broke this, not me. Greg was silent. For the first time in a long time, he didn't have words. Renee broke the silence. You're going to let her walk out that door. You're not going to follow her. You're not going to text or call. If you do, I'll have you arrested so fast your head will spin. You have no jurisdiction here. I do. And even if I didn't, I'm a witness, a sworn officer. You want to test me? Go ahead. He backed up. I'm calling my lawyer, he muttered. Good, Renee snapped. Call him. Tell him the divorce papers are already filed and tell him I've got evidence of verbal and emotional abuse. You're insane, he muttered, but his voice had no heat. I walked past him, my hand still tight around my duffel bag. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I didn't look back. Not once. When I reached the door, Renee followed. You don't scare me, Greg called after us, but his voice cracked. And I knew. He was scared now. Renee and I stepped outside into the cold night air. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing, like I hadn't taken a real breath in years. Then she gently touched my arm. You okay? I nodded slowly. Not yet, but I will be. We walked to her car parked down the block. It was the same blue sedan we used to sneak out in when we were 17. Back then, we were just girls with big dreams and cheap lip gloss. Now, she was a cop, and I was finally free. As we drove off, I didn't look back at the house. That house held too many ghosts. Renee kept her eyes on the road. You were brave back there. I didn't feel brave, I said quietly. Still counts. We didn't speak for a while. I just stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur into gold streaks. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would look like, but for the first time in a long, long time, I knew Greg wouldn't be part of it. Renee let me stay at her place that night. She gave me the guest room, and as soon as I walked in, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safety. The bed was soft. The silence wasn't heavy with dread. There were no slamming doors, no angry footsteps pacing the floor. Just peace. I curled up on the edge of the mattress, fully clothed, not even bothering to unpack my bag. My body ached. My soul ached worse. But I was free. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight poured through the window. It felt foreign, strange even, like I didn't recognize the world anymore, like I'd stepped out of a war zone and into a quiet garden. Renee was already up, making coffee. Sleep okay? She asked. I nodded. I didn't dream. That's the best part. She poured me a cup and slid it across the table. You ready to talk about next steps? I held the warm mug between my hands. I don't even know what that means yet. That's okay, she said. One thing at a time. We sat in silence for a while. I let the warmth seep into my hands. My fingers still felt like they were shaking, even if they weren't. Then she pulled out a folder from under the table. I printed out the divorce papers. They're already signed on your end. I also have a contact at Legal Aid who can help you get a restraining order. I stared at the folder. A thin stack of paper. That's all it took to end 17 years of fear, humiliation, and pretending everything was fine. Thank you, I whispered. You did this, Renee said. Not me. You walked out. Later that day, we drove to the courthouse. The clerk looked at the documents and nodded. It'll be official in a few weeks, she said. We'll keep you updated. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just felt calm, like my body had finally stopped bracing for impact. A few weeks passed. I found a small job at a bookstore near Renee's place. Nothing fancy, just stocking shelves and helping customers find their way through dusty aisles. But I loved it. Every morning, I'd wake up and drink coffee with no one yelling across the room. No fists slammed into walls. No cruel words dripping from the edge of a mouth that once promised love. One day, while dusting the romance section, I heard my name. I turned, and there stood a face I hadn't seen in years. Greg's sister. We'd been close once before he'd slowly pulled me away from everyone I loved. She looked at me carefully, like she wasn't sure what version of me she'd find. I heard, she said softly. I nodded. It's true. Good, she replied. I always hoped you'd get out. He's not right. Never was. I blinked. You knew? We all knew, she whispered, but we didn't know how bad it had gotten. I didn't blame her. That was the thing about abuse. It lived in the shadows. It wore a mask. No one saw the bruises on your heart. Before she left, she hugged me. Tight. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Those words meant more than she could ever know. The divorce went through. Greg didn't show up in court. Not once. Coward. Renee said he moved out of state. Someplace cold and empty, just like him. I never looked him up. I didn't need to, because I had my life back, and this time, it was mine alone. No yelling, no fists, no fear, just books, coffee, quiet mornings, and maybe, one day, love, the kind that doesn't leave scars. But for now, I chose peace over pain, and that, to me, was everything.